My fellow citizens, we all know why we've gathered here today. I look upon you and see in your faces emotions that mirror my own. I see anger. I see despair. Despair in face of a nation and its once prosperous people brought to its knees by the corrupt and greedy rulers. How many of you, friends, were once intrepid merchants brought to bankruptcy by one-sided laws? How many of you, wise scholars whose ideas could revitalize the land, were denied proper education simply because you had a wrong name? How many of you, brave soldiers and brilliant strategists, were left to rot in the trenches, whilst incompetent fools climbed military ladder simply because they owned a bit of land? My friends, we are all victims of tyranny, but it does not have to be this way. I can hear you in the back there, with your death to the king and behead the tyrant slogans. But let us not forget who our real enemies are. Not only the king, for he is merely a symptom, sign of far worse cancer that plagues our people. It's the noble classes themselves. Spoiled and enriched by our daily toil, they treat us worse than English plantators treat their slaves. And yet, in their petty tyranny, they grow more and more decadent. Our very meeting here, right under the king's nose, is a proof of their weakness. So it is them we must eradicate as well, for as long as there are nobles, there will always be kings. And as long as there are kings, they will create more nobles to help them subdue people like us. For there is nothing kings fear more, my fellow citizens, than their own people who dream of freedom. My friends, long ago our Piast ancestors took an eagle, a mighty ruler of the skies, as their sigil, and planted a crown atop his head. But the crown was not a sign of authority, no. It was merely a shackle that prevented the proud eagle to soar freely in the skies. It is why we must abandon crowns, abandon thrones and abandon kings and all who support them. Let us unite, my fellow citizens, under the new banner, the Crownless Eagle, so we, the people of Poland, could finally live life we were destined to. My friends, those of you who wish to join our cause, those of you who want to build a brighter future for yourselves, for your children and for all citizens of our nation, shout I! Hello everyone and welcome to the first episode of the Crownless Eagle, a narrative let's play for Empire Total War, where we will be playing Poland-Lithuania. Now there are two reasons I've decided to go with Poland-Lithuania. First, the probably more important, is the fact that 18th century, the time period covered by Empire Total War, was a time when Poland disappeared off the map. It was actually partitioned between Prussia, Austria and Russia. And none of these nations actually had to wage a war against Poland. They just kind of sat down and decided that, you know what, Poland is too weak, they cannot defend themselves, how about we just carve them up into nice little pieces. They did this 3 times and Poland, well, disappeared off the map for 123 years. So the overarching goal of this campaign will be to ensure that this doesn't happen. Now, the second reason I decided to go with Poland-Lithuania was their political system. Because you see, during the 18th century, Poland was this noble democracy / elective monarchy, where the kings really had nothing to say in the way the country was ruled, and nobles had everything to say, and usually no two nobles ever had the same opinion. Now, at the beginning of 18th century, Poland was ruled by August von Wettin, a noble from Saxony, and, well, August wasn't very liked among the people. He actually never won the election, but that didn't really stop him from claiming the throne. There's actually an interesting tale concerning his coronation and rise to power, because August II was the king who had an RPG-like quest to do in order to actually gain the crown. Now it went like this. In Poland, when you were elected as a king, you had to crown yourself with the crown jewels locked in the vault underneath the Wawel castle in Kraków. However, to get into the vault you had to have 8 keys, because there were 8 locks, and each key was in possession of one of the senators. Now it was to ensure that you couldn't just waltz into the vault and stole the jewels, because that would be considered sacrilegious. And let me sidetrack here for a moment. It actually tells us something very, very interesting about the people of these times. Now apparently it was considered alright to bribe your way into the throne or use foreign armies to threaten your political opponents, but apparently breaking a few locks was considered sacrilegious and taboo. But still, to get the keys to those locks you had to have support of the senators. And August had only support of 2 senators, and the other 6 were his opponents. And that's where potential for RPG shows itself, because just imagine this young, impressionable noble wants to become a king, so he tries to convince the senators to elect him. He goes to the senator who's the, I don't know, marshal of the realm, and to impress him he defeats bandits to prove that he's a clever commander. Or he goes to a senator who's a merchant prince and, I don't know, negotiates trade dispute or something. There's a potential for a really good story there, and maybe, I don't know, an entire act of RPG game. But obviously reality is always worse than imagination. And so King August, well, he dealt with the problem with the subtlety of a man who bent horseshoes with his bare hands. He read the rules and he realized that, you know what, lads? There's a lot of stuff here about keys, but there's nothing here about the wall. And so he just had his men break a hole in the wall, and then he got in and got the jewels and crowned himself with them. So much for tradition. Right, but enough of that sidetracking, let's focus on the campaign. What you're seeing here are basically the opening moves of any Total War game. I'm just building up infrastructure to support armies, to prepare for inevitable wars that's going to happen, though I'm actually not going to initiate any wars, because, well, at least as long as I'm elective monarchy, I'm going to actually roleplay, or at least try to roleplay, the governments of those times, and that means that I can afford a little bit of incompetence on my part. Actually, quite a lot of incompetence, given the fact that the country actually disappeared off the map due to its poor leadership. So basically I'm just going to, in a way, play against myself here, and that might make the campaign significantly harder, given the fact that I will probably need every little advantage I can get, given the fact that my neighbors mostly hate me, and it's not actually like they hate me without reason. So let's see. Sweden hates me because of the 30 Years' War, because we fought against them, and they actually broke their teeth in Poland. Prussia hates me because I own Gdańsk, and they needed to unify their lands. The Ottomans hate us because of Battle of Vienna, where we defended Vienna from their advance. Austrians... Actually, I'm not sure why Austrians hate me. Probably it has something to do with Saxon king, who is de facto subject of Holy Roman Emperor, is actually a king of Poland, so the Emperor actually might not have a jurisdiction over King August. And Russians, they don't actually hate us, they're allied to us, but I don't think they have forgotten the fact that in 1610 we have captured Moscow, their capital, and were very, very close to getting into union with them, so they would be ruled by Polish king instead of Russian Tsar, sorry. So basically we have a country that cannot govern itself, and, well, neighbors who all have reasonable grievances against us. But I'm actually not going to prepare that much. I'm going to pretend, just like Polish nobles pretended, that nothing bad is going to happen, and all those superpowers are just going to murder each other and hopefully leave me alone. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to prepare some defenses in Gdańsk, just to ensure that Prussians cannot just waltz in when they finally decide that it's time to declare war on me. Now, unfortunately, my little peaceful dream doesn't even last a single year, and in autumn, Austrians declare war on Saxony, homeland of my king. Now, usually I would just ignore that and break alliance, but this time I'm actually going to join the war on the Saxon side, sorry. And to be honest, this might turn very bad for me given the sheer amount of allies Austria has. So what I have to do now is to organize some sort of expeditionary force, and since the king commands only a minor fraction of Polish army, I need to call Sejm into session. I'm also going to send Saxony some financial aid in form of easily transportable jewelry. Now, thankfully Austrians did nothing during their turn, other than declaring war, so I can begin to assemble Sejm in regular order. Messages are going to be sent, and hopefully within a month every noble, including our 3 generals, should present themselves on the field near Warsaw to decide the course of action in the upcoming war. In the meantime, Austrians actually do commit to war, and immediately besiege Dresden, Saxon capital. For a while there it seems that Austrians are going to be unopposed, but Saxons bravely counterattack during their turn, beating Austrians back, even chasing survivors to kill them to the last man. So, good on them. Now, during my turn, it's time to assemble the Sejm and figure out just how are we going to deal with this new war. I'm moving Lempicki, Poniatowski and Potocki next to Warsaw, hoping to convince their noble brothers to raise their levies, their banners and join the ranks. Well, let's see how this goes.
Well, that's all we can hope for today.
How did it go?
As good as you might expect. It's a cold day and most of our noble brothers warm themselves with booze. I wasn't even halfway through our letter when someone threatened me with veto. I got out before the worst of screaming began, though. So we won't get any troops then? Well, I wonder if our, as you call them, brothers, are aware that an army is generally something necessary in order to wage a war.
They are, General Poniatowski,
but the true problem is the king. He spoke before me, and from his speech it is clear that he doesn't want us to protect our borders. He wants to send an army to Saxony.
He what?
Prussians are stationed merely few weeks away from Warsaw, and he wants me to march into Germany with an army I don't have. I'm afraid yes. It's his home after all, and he doesn't want this, strictly speaking. He ordered it. Specifically, he wants you to lead the relief force, General Poniatowski. Unbelievable. Of all 3 of us, I'm the only one who's not commanding any forces. Why not send you, Lempicki? You command our biggest force at this point.
Yes, a force of militiamen, terrified out of their breeches the moment they lose their city from sight. I could lend them to you, but they would desert before reaching border.
I don't need your cowards, Lempicki. I had good men back in the south, before our illustrious king decided they're too expensive to keep around.
I see.
Could you still gather them? Well, their equipment is still in armory in Lwów, but I wouldn't be able to pay them, let alone procure supplies for such a long journey.
I see.
Well, General, we're out of options, so we're just going to improvise. With all that business with riots recently, the king... well, he ordered me to organize defenses in Warsaw, in case his life was in danger. He even gave me money for this. I believe, my friends, that this money could be enough to field enough forces to be sufficient match against the Austrians. I will send you money from my private vault as well. I believe I still have some trinkets from Vienna. And I'm sure our General Lempicki managed to set aside some money, what with being a watch commander in our largest trade city. Am I right, General?
Yes, of course. I will pitch in as well.
Excellent. Then we're set. Poniatowski goes south immediately. Maybe even today. Let me worry about the money. I'm pretty sure some of our brothers will contribute, after a bit of one-on-one conversation. Lempicki, you get back to Gdańsk and dig in. Should Prussians attack, you will inevitably be their first target. And I will stay in Warsaw, as per order, and ensure our Royal Highness feels safe and is not asking questions about his new guard. Gentlemen, we may be in bad situation, but I will not let this country fall on my watch. To work!
So, with that same business done, we now know what to do. Our generals are going to quietly leave the assembly and return to their posts, gathering all the money they can get to equip some sort of proper army. You can also see here that Saxons will probably need all this money I've been sending them, because it seems their force is almost only cannons, so hopefully they will use those jewels I've sent them to actually place some armed soldiers between those guns and their enemies.
Now, in the end-turn sequence we can see that Austrians, who were already beaten 3 times by Saxons, do nothing. They probably decided to back off for a while because their earlier efforts were completely useless. Still, they have a huge empire, so they're probably building up forces, and I have a bad feeling that their next attack is not going to be some random half-stack, but an all-out invasion. In my turn, we can see that our forces are already assembling near Warsaw. Seems that Lempicki and Potocki really came through with the money. It's a relatively small force, only a half-stack, but all those men are professional soldiers, so there are no militia there. Actually, I could use some militia because they are larger than line infantry. I mean, the units of militia are larger than line infantry, and I could use them to soak up some damage. Now, I moved this new force all the way to Austrian border near Wrocław because it's only lightly defended, so perhaps I could easily steal it from Austrians and reintroduce Silesia back into Poland. But then, as I expected, Prussians also declare war on Saxony. I don't think they have any issues with us right now. They probably just want to take Dresden before Austrians do, because I feel that King Friedrich doesn't really enjoy an idea of Austrians expanding so close to him. Still, I'm going to get dragged into this war, which could be dangerous given large Prussian force in Königsberg. Then, perhaps emboldened by Prussians, the Duchy of Hanover also declares war on Saxons, and moments later Bavaria also joins the fun. Then, Saxon army, feeling probably invincible after beating Austrians for a few times, decide to take Prussians' advance head-on, but they only manage to get themselves killed, so not good on them this time. So, at the beginning of my turn, we're in a really bad situation. We're at war with almost entire Germany, and all of our enemies could easily field armies larger than we could. And Allied army we're supposed to protect just committed suicide. Still, the plan remains unchanged, at least for now. Poniatowski can't reach Dresden this month, so we're going to continue our march to Wrocław. We besiege it, demand troops stationed inside, just a small group of militia backed by a few mortars, to lay down their arms. Unfortunately, they seem confident in their stronghold and refuse our offer, so if we really need to reach Dresden in time, we need to storm the walls right now. I could technically auto-resolve it, but I don't trust auto-resolve in Empire, so I'm going to play this myself to ensure I don't take any unnecessary losses, as I will probably need every single man later to deal with Germans. I'm saving the game quickly there, because siege battles sometimes act funny in Empire, and now I'm ready for the first battle in this campaign. Let's see what happens on the battlefield then. So here we are at Festung Breslau, and it's a surprisingly nice day for an early winter. Poniatowski's plan for this battle is a simple one. Our cannons, which Poniatowski is going to oversee himself, are going to pound enemy walls until there are some breaches our infantry could exploit. Once that's done, infantry is going to march forward and take fort from the few defenders, hopefully without taking many losses. For now, though, they are hidden behind both the large hill in front of the fort and behind trenches, because it seems that they are in range of Austrian wall-mounted artillery. I also hidden my 2 cavalry companies in the forest south of the fort, because Austrians have 1 unit of professional line infantry coming from that direction to support the defense. It's not much, but if they are allowed to get inside the fort, they could become a very difficult obstacle for my men storming the ramparts. So, I'm going to rush my cavalry to intercept them before they are safely hidden behind the walls. Now, it seems that Austrians decided that hanging around in the open with my cavalry running around is not a very good idea, and they rush for the fort. I was afraid that for a moment they could turn and give my approaching men a volley, but it seems they mostly want to get inside the walls and fight on their own terms. But that's not going to happen, and they are hit in the flank by my Uwans. Actually, it's a little blunder on my part there. I should have charged them with my regular regiment of horse and then circle around with Uwans to deliver a devastating rear charge. I realize that and instantly make a second mistake and order my 2nd cavalry unit to attack immediately without circling around. Now, I'm confident my men will win this engagement because of their numbers and the fact that Austrians don't have bayonets researched yet, but still, they are going to give my horsemen surprisingly hard time, and this fight is going to take far longer than it should. Now, while enemy infantry won't kill many of my horsemen, they will nonetheless do a good job of not dying themselves, and all this time this mosh pit of units is going to be under fire from enemy wall cannons. Now, a few minutes later, I decide this fight was going for far too long now and decide to pull my ones back and do this whole rear charge business properly this time. I'm actually having problems trying to get all my men out of there because enemies fight really hard in there, not showing fear despite clearly being in a bad spot. You can also see here my cannons actually managed to bring down a section of the walls, and the enemy actually abandoned the walls altogether, apparently afraid of taking losses from my guns. They're going to hide themselves in the courtyard for now, where I can't really hit them, so I'm going to let my gunners work on bringing down more walls. And now my Uans, after finally lining up, deliver a rear charge into enemy troops led by this single brave, or maybe insane, soldier there, and this instantly routs enemy units, so perhaps more men would be alive now if I have done that properly the first time. After bombarding the fort for quite a while, we managed to open 3 breaches in the walls, so it's time to advance and take that fort from the Austrians. I'm going to march my men towards the walls at a slow pace to conserve their strength, because they will need it to storm the breaches and deal with the defenders. Now, because enemy militia abandoned the walls, they're not going to be able to fire their cannons at me, but still that leaves the mortars. Now, in hands of the player, mortars are just pathetic, inaccurate waste of space on the battlefield, but when commanded by AI, they perform surprisingly better, as you can see here. Actually, props to those Austrian gunners, they can land direct hit on a moving unit hidden behind wall, forest and a hill. So, I'm going to have to do something about those mortars, because the only people dying pointlessly today are not going to be my men. And to do that, I'm going to use this 3rd breach at the back of the fort. Now I'm moving a single cavalry company there, but it will take them some time to get there, and then I decide to support them with 1 unit of infantry, who are already circling around the fort. And here we can see the effects of enemy mortar barrage ourselves, so here's another couple of men who won't be going home. But it's time to silence those enemy guns for good. I'm rushing my cavalry through the breach in the back of the fort to charge at the mortar emplacement, silence it quickly, and then get out as fast as I can. I expected this to be over in a few seconds, but it seems that the Austrians are determined to fight here. Here we can see that their commander, who was just observing something through the spyglass, stared at my men with mild surprise, then casually strolls to the mortar, apparently to blow it up along with everyone around him. One of my men takes a wild swing at him, medal to that man, and the suicidal commander is forced to defend himself instead of trying to blow everyone up. And all this time there were over 1,000 of enemy men just a couple meters away, but it seems that they were either ordered to keep their eyes forward no matter what, or were terrified of what could enter through those breaches if they turn around to face my cavalry. When the enemy finally decided to respond to my horsemen, they have already completed their mission. Austrian mortars are out of the game, their commander is dead, and he didn't take any of my men with him. So I can safely pull my horsemen out and not risk to fight them with masses of enemy militia. And now it's time for the main event. I am lining up my men in front of the breaches to have a bit of firefight. Now, since my men are line infantry, it means they can fire by rank, so 3 ranks of men will fire at the enemy one by one. Militia, on the other hand, can only fire from the first rank in an uncoordinated way, and they also reload their muskets a bit slower than line infantry, so I'm just going to try and engage them in ranged combat, and then, once they're focused on my infantry, I could perhaps rush my cavalry inside the fort once again and hit them in the back. Now here we see my men begin to fire at the enemy, and it's a nice show of well-trained military unit in action. First rank fires, kneels down to reload, then second one fires, and then third. Not all of the men are firing, because enemies are still mostly hidden behind the walls, but these cycling volleys are really going to hurt our Austrian defenders. Or rather they would if only Austrians decided to fire back at my men. Unfortunately, they don't seem to agree with my plan, and instead just charge screaming through the breach, rushing at my men. Seems that suicidal spirit of their late commander is strong within these ones. Unfortunately, this is not something I had in mind, since neither side has bayonets. Melee fights could quickly become very messy, and I don't want to lose men here. It also seems that the Austrians are much faster than my soldiers, perhaps due to irregular nature of their unit, and they're catching up to my men. Now, my second unit just fired a volley there, but that could cause some friendly fire, so instead I'm rushing them forward to strike the enemy flank with a melee charge. Now, on the other side, it seems that enemy militia is going to do exactly the same thing, so I'm reforming my men there in a way that enemies are going to be greeted with 2 units of line infantry, that is 6 lines of muskets, ready to fire. I'm also ordering my cavalry to hurry to the fort once again. The melee in front of the fort turns into a mess, but it's a mess we're winning. In fact, in this very moment, the enemy breaks, and my men are going to just charge in and take out as many as they can to ensure they're not coming back. You will see that my men just run over Austrian militiamen, taking them down by the dozen. Now I'm going to reform lines quickly, because it seems that the other unit actually wants to engage my lines in ranged combat. I'm going to spread my men around so we could have a large number of muskets all firing into this single breach, which should quickly persuade the defenders to just, hopefully, give up. On the other side, however, something wrong is happening to the Austrian soldiers. It seems their commander cannot decide which one of two units on the other side he wants his men to engage, and during his sudden attack of indecision, this militia unit is going to be completely messed up by fire from my ranks, their leading men getting shot down as they emerge from the breach. On the other side we have a regular firefight, but now my cavalry is once again inside the fort, and they are backed by a unit of infantry now pouring through the third breach. I'm going to put those men inside of the enemy HQ so they could fire at the enemy troops from the windows, and then I'm going to order my infantry in front of the first breach to just stop firing and charge in, and as they charge, my cavalry will also strike the enemy from the back. I'm going to let my two other companies to continue firing at the still indecisive Austrians, because that way my men are not going to take any unnecessary losses. But as the defenders near the first breach begin to waver, I decide it's time to wrap this up, and I order a full-out melee charge on the enemy forces. I'm moving my second cavalry unit, the Uans, to support that fight, and this move seems to finally push the indecisive militia to commit to something. That something is marching stoically at my charging men, so perhaps it's supposed to be the last defiant show of bravery or something. But unfortunately, bravery alone fares poorly against overwhelming numbers, and so this last enemy unit throws down their weapons and start to run away the moment my Uans attack them. And that's it there. All enemy men are either dead or running away, and I'm actually going to chase them down just to show them what happens when you refuse offer of surrender from a clearly overwhelming force. Not that it matters, because these men are actually going to be disbanded, but for Poniatowski it's a matter of principle. And here are the battle results. We've lost only 120 men, 28 of which died due to friendly fire, mostly from our artillery firing into that melee in front of the walls. And here is more detailed report, which shows that all of our men performed really nicely, especially given the fact that this was a siege assault. So, we have captured Wrocław and scored our first victory both in this campaign and in this war. Now, it wasn't a particularly difficult battle, true, but it's always nice to start a war with some nice morale boost from an easy conquest. And trust me, we're gonna need that boost in the future. But that's all for this episode. We'll see how the situation unfolds next time.
And that concludes our report from Sachsen. General Dessau believes that, in no small part thanks to Austrians, he will be able to raise our flag above Dresden in 2, maybe 3 months. And for the last topic, our Polish campaign. I am aware, gentlemen, that some of you feel all this business with Poland is not dealt with sufficiently. But it is, I'd say, going rather according to plan. See, the lack of any progress in our operations against Poland is not the fault of the army. In fact, it was I who ordered no action taken against them. No, do not speak. I value your opinion, gentlemen, but we are not in Poland. When I speak, you listen. Thank you. Now, before all of you begin thinking about some outraged response, allow me to explain. The truth of the matter, gentlemen, is that we do not want Poland. We might need it, sooner or later, but right now we really do not want to fight them. We would win, I'm sure, given laughable lack of any defences on their side, but then what? In any other country we could just placate nobles, maybe scare a few, and soon they'd be back to keeping peasants in check, but this time in our name. But over there, they are so used to their anarchy and their privileges that trying to bring them any semblance of order would mean that they will be up in arms within a week. And the problem with nobles revolting is the fact they tend to be surprisingly well funded. The second thing is more subtle. Look at the map, gentlemen. You see? Aside from their lands, we would instantly inherit their greatest weakness. Their position, gentlemen. Stuck between Austria, Russia, Sweden and Ottomans is no place I'd want to be. In truth, I believe it's the main reason Poland still exists. Nobody, not even Russians, want to be so exposed. But I would not worry. This Commonwealth is such an insane idea that it cannot hold itself together. Trust me on this, gentlemen. The day will come when Poland's own rulers will sell their country for a handful of coins, and will go around saying they did this for their country's own good. Alright, thank you all so much for watching the Crownless Eagle. Now, this video and the prologue were literally the first ones I have ever made in my life. So, if you have any comments, critiques, or maybe even some advice how to make those narrative let's plays more enjoyable, feel free to leave them in the comments section. Episode 2 is going to arrive in the week. See ya!